What's up, everybody? Welcome to Jump Wave. Today we are going to be doing a cover of Flowers by Miley Cyrus on the Korg Volca Sample 2. And we're only using the factory samples. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about the original track. The original track is in C major, and the original tempo is 118. But we are going to cut that in half on the Volca, and we're going to set our tempo at 59 beats per minute. We're also going to bump our swing up to 5. All right. And we are going to clear this pattern to ensure that we are starting fresh here. Let's talk about our samples. Let's load up our samples here. On part 1, we're going to have sample 001, that is Kick Dusty. On part 2, we are going to have sample 24, that is Snare Thick. On part 3, we are going to have sample 55, that is O.Hat Dirty. On part 4, we're going to have Electric Bass. That is sample 128. On part 5, we're going to have Guitar Mute. That is sample 123. On part 6, we're going to have Cold Stab. That is sample 108. On part 7, we're going to have Dyna Strings. That is sample 120. And on part 8, we're going to have Conga Low, which is sample 72. So those are our samples that we're going to use for this song. So let's go ahead and let's get started laying in this pattern. We're going to go back to part 1. We're going to go to step mode, and we're going to lay down a basic 4 on the floor beat here on steps 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and 15. We're going to add that kick drum. All right, now let's go over to our snare. We're going to put a snare on steps 3, 7, 11, and 15. Now let's go to our hats. The reason why we're using the open hat instead of the closed hat is so that we can save space on parts here, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So let's go ahead and let's put an open hat here on steps 1 through 16. Now you can hear it's got that open hat sound. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn down the decay until we get a closed hat sound, because we only want the open hat sound on step 16. So we're going to hold down step 16 and turn the decay all the way to 127. So now we got that open hi-hat sound there at the end of the pattern. Another thing we're going to do is we are going to program some level changes here. So we're going to hold down step 1 and turn the levels down to around 50. We don't want it exactly 50, we want a little variation, but every even number step we're going to turn that level down just to give the hat pattern a little bit more of a groove and a little bit more of a human feel. And then we'll turn the whole thing down just a little bit to about 80. So you can hear it has a little bit more of a groove to it, a little bit more of a human feel, which is what we want. All right, let's move on over to the bass. Sorry. There's our bass. Now, there are basically 5 different bass patterns here. So we're going to start with one, and then once we get into arranging the different parts, then we'll start talking about how the bass has these little variations at the end of the pattern. But we're going to basically just lay down the first part here. So we have a bass on 1, on 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Now if we play this, we are only hearing the bass sample play the note C. But of course, that's not what we want. We don't want the C note for 16 steps. We want some different notes here. So to change the note, we have to hold down the step, hit function, and then go to speed, where we can change the note values. So by turning this knob here, we can change the note values up or down. So these are chromatic. So we start at C. 1 is C sharp, 2 is D, 3 is D sharp, 4 is E, 5 is F, so on and so forth, and it goes into the negative. -1 is B, -2 is B flat, -3 is A, so on and so forth, okay? So we want an A here, so we're going to hold down the step, hit function, and we're going to turn this down -3. So we want an A there, we want an A here, we want an A here, so we got A's there. Then we want a C. On step 6, we're going to leave that B. On step 7, we want an E, so we're going to turn this up 4. We got a C here, we want to leave that B. Here we got a D, so we're going +2, D +2, D +2, and then we have an E, a D, so E is +4, a D +2, and then a C, we leave it B. Let's listen. All right, so that's the first part. Our bass is done. We're going to go over now to the mute guitar part, and it is the exact same thing as the bass. So what they were going for was that classic tic-tac bass sound of the country music from like the 50s and 60s. So it's a layered bass part. So you have a muted guitar part playing the same thing the bass plays, and it adds a little bit more of that pick-attack sound to the bass, a little bit more. It cuts through the mix just a little bit more, and it sounds really clean and really nice. So we're going to lay down the exact same pattern for the muted guitar part, and it's the same notes and everything. So it's A, -3, A, -3, A, -3. That's a C, we leave that B, and we got it E +4, C, leave that B. It's a D +2, D +2, D +2. Got an E +4, D +2, and in a C we leave that B. Sounds a little funky there. There we go. All right, it's a little high in the mix, so what we're going to do is we're going to use the high cut here, and we're going to cut some of the highs out so it just blends a little bit more with the bass. Right there, around 60 on the high cut sounds good. Another thing you can do is you can kind of pan it a little bit to the left to about 25, and it just opens up the sound a little bit more. In the original recording, it's two guitars panned hard left and hard right. We don't have enough space here to, do two guitar parts. It's just a little redundant on the vocal sample. So we'll just pan it a little bit. We'll just use one part, just pan it a little bit to the left. It'll just give it a little bit of a larger stereo sound, but just know in the original it is two guitars. But we're making do with what we got here on the limited functionality of the vocal sample, and that's why we love this machine. We love its limitations, It allows us to get creative and try some things that we wouldn't have tried before. So that's a good thing. All right, let's go over to now the chord progression part on part 6. We're using this sample Cold Stab. It's a kind of a weird sounding sample. We're going to do some things to it to make it sound a little bit better. But just know that sampling a chord is difficult to change the pitch and then match originally what you're going for. So, you know, if this sample is a C major chord, theoretically you can pitch it up and down and you're going to get, you know, a D minor, an E major, an F, a G major, an A minor, and so, you know, you're going to get those different chords theoretically. What happens though is that it doesn't work out that way. So it's a little different. There's some harmonic stuff going on there with the sample that doesn't translate when you do these note value changes. However, we don't really have a really good option for that, just using the factory samples. Of course, we could load up you know, a sample of an A minor chord, of a D minor chord, of a G major chord, of a C major chord, or we could just play that. But, you know, my challenge here is to just use the factory sample. So I'm doing the best I can with what I got on here. So just know that it's not going to sound perfect. And I realize that. I realize that it's not, you know, going to be super accurate, but it's the best that we can do. I try to basically use 3 parts to play a triad, and each part was synced to a different, each part played a different note of the triad chord, so that, you know, you could play that traditionally and have a little bit of polyphony with the sound, and it was very accurate. The problem is that what I ran into was some voice stealing. So although you have 10 parts, meaning you can play 10 different samples at once, the truth is that when you have 10 parts playing at one time, voice stealing happens. And what voice stealing basically means is that there's not enough memory in here to handle all 10 samples playing at once. So some samples get cut off early to make room for the other ones. It's something that is really, every piece of Korg gear I've owned has had some type of voice stealing issue. I'm kind of surprised that this one has it because the samples and stuff are so low res. And that's why we love this box, because it is, you know, it is a lo-fi king. But yeah, a little disappointed there. So just know that I'm doing the best I can, and this sample was the best one that I could find that really I thought sounded closest to the actual chord progression. If you have a better idea, if you have a better sample or a better way of doing this, let me know in the comments, because I was really scratching my head with this one, trying to figure it out. So just know that I know it's not perfect, but it's the best we could do. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to lay this down. So we have one here on 3, and we have another one here on 11. And this is the A minor chord. So we are going to turn our C major chord down 3. And this is a D minor chord. So we are going to turn it up 2. So like I said, theoretically you have the fingerings of a C major chord. Theoretically, pitching it up and down, you should be able to get an A minor and a D minor chord because it's the same fingerings on the piano. It's not perfect, but it is what it is. Let's listen. So you can hear this sample has a little bit of this like weird digital effect going on. We're just going to cut the highs off, and it kind of goes away. And then we're just going to pan it a little bit to the right, just to open it up, the space a little bit, and have it shine through the mix a little bit more. All right. Now let's go to the string part. unmute it. And the strings part is real simple, but real nice. So we got one here on step 1. We have another one here on 15, 13, and 11. So the first note is an E. We're going to turn that up 4. Next note is an F. Turn it up 5. Then we got another E, up 4, and a D. This is up 2. So you can hear the sample ends not quite before it gets to the next note. So what we have to do is we have to do our little loop trick here. Turn on the loop, then we're going to turn the length down to about 110, and that should make the give us this fake sustained sound, so it sounds like the sample's playing all the way through. All right, and then the last part is our little conga percussion part. And you know, it's kind of hard to hear what it's doing on the record. It's, you know, it's doing some weird stuff in the background. There's a couple of different percussion things doing that. I'm not going to get too detailed with it. I'm just doing it, just adding a couple little hits in here just to add some flavor. Off because they're kind of loud. Yeah, just a little bit of a flavor in the background. Not really trying to make it stand out too much, but just trying to add to the overall groove and rhythm of the beat there. So this is good. We're gonna save this on part 1. We're gonna save it on part 3. We're gonna save it on part 5. And we'll see why in a second. We're also going to save it on part 2. And on part 2, we are going to do some changes here. We're going to leave most of the percussion alone. We're not going to change that. We do need to change the bass and the strings though. So we're going to go in and we're going to go part 2 on the bass. This is a G, so this is -5, G, -5, G, -5, and then we got an A, -3, we have a D, +2, A, -3, and we have a C. Now normally we would leave it alone, but because we did change it, we do have to turn it back to 0 to get C. So 9, 11, 13 is C, that's 0. 14 is also C, but it's 1 octave up, so we're going to turn it up to 12. And then 15 is E, +4. And 16 is also E, an octave up, so that's 16. All right, let's change our guitar also. Again, it's the same exact thing as the bass, so it's a -5 to make a G on step 1, 3, and 5. -5, G. Then we got a -3 for A, +4, or excuse me, +2 for a D. I think this one changed here. We just got to make sure we get that -3A. And this one, it's also a -3A. And then we got a C, change that back to 0. C, 0. C, 0. C plus 12. E plus 4. And then E plus 16. Let's turn the strings off because that's going to be distracting. And they're off. All right. All right, now we need to change the chords. So the chords are G, -5, and C, 0. And then we also have this extra E chord here. So that's a -8. All right. Now we're going to go to our strings part. And we're going to change this. Now this is a -1 B. We have +4 E, +2 D, and a 0 C. All right, we're going to save that on step 2. We're going to save that on 4. And we're going to save that on 6. All right. Now, we have a third part here that we're going to do. And this is like the little breakdown part at the end of the chorus. So basically, this is the part where, you know, the drums drop out and then it loops back around to the verse. So we're already on the strings here, so let's go ahead and change the strings part. This is A, -3. And then we got F right here on step 5. That's -7. And then we got an E, step 9. That's -8. And we'll change this one to F, -7, and this is an E, -8. Take that one out. And the drums kind of drop out about halfway through. So we're going to just kind of take out some of these hats here on the even number beats. And then we're going to take the snare off on 11 and 15. And we're going to take the kicks off on 11, 13, and 15. All right. And we'll go and change the bass. So the bass isn't doing the same thing it does in the verses. It's a little bit different. So we'll change this to F. This is +5. F. This is +5. Actually, we've got a note over here. It moves from step 3 to step 4. So that's F, F, +5. This is a F +5. Then we have a G +7. A C, 0, and then F +5, and then we got an E +4, and nothing after that. And again, it's the same thing for our guitar. F +5, F +5, F plus 5, G plus 7, C 0, F plus 5, and E plus 4. And I actually think I'm going to change these strings a little bit because I think it might sound a little bit better going a little higher. So we're going to change this to plus 9 here, plus 5, and plus 4. Do a little high cut on this one. And we're going to turn the attack up to about 100 so these aren't so sharp. And we're going to save that on number 7 there. Okay. And you know, I actually want to go and I want to change the attack on all these strings. So let's go to pattern 1 again. Go to our part 7. We're going to turn that attack up on that and save it on 1, 3, and 5. And then we're going to go to our part 2, turn the attack up. Do the high cut, but we'll save that on 2, 4, and 6. Go back on 1. Do our high cut. All right. So I mentioned before that there's a little bit of a variation on the bass here. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave the bass alone on part 2. We're going to go and load up part 4. And there's a little change in the bass at the end of the pattern. So instead of doing these octave jumps, basically it's just going to go here to plus 4, and then a 0, and a -1. And we'll do that here with the same thing. Plus 4, 0, and a -1. Just a little bit of a variation there. So we're going to save that on 4. Now we're going to load up 6 because there's also a little variation in the bass line there. So it changes from basically you end up with on steps 9, 11, 12, 13, 15, and 16. So we get C, 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 and then B, -1, B, -1, and B, -1. This is right before we get to that breakdown part, so there's just a little bit of a change there, a little bit of a variation. And we'll do the same thing here. It's C, C, B, -1, B, -1, and B, -1. All right, we'll save that. Now, we're going to go back to part 1, and we're going to turn the strings off. They're already off, good. Save that. We'll go to part 2. Turn the strings off. Save that. Part 3, strings are off. Part 4, we're going to turn the strings off. Save that. Part 5, we're going to turn the strings on. Save that. Part 6, turn the strings on. Save that. And then, of course, part 7, we want the strings on. All right. Now, let's load this up. And we're going to chain patterns 1 through 7 together. And if we did everything correctly, it should sound pretty close to the song. So to chain the patterns, you hold down memory, and then you select with one finger step 1, and then with the other finger step 7, and that will chain patterns 1 through 7 together. All right, there you have it. That is Flowers by Miley Cyrus on the Korg Volca Sample 2, using only the factory samples. Like I said before, if you have a better way of sampling and playing chords on here, I'd love to hear it. Like I said, I know you can just load up samples of whatever, but I just wanted to stick to using the limitations of the factory samples in here. So if you have a better way of using the factory samples to play different chord progressions, let me know. I'd love to hear it. If you have a workaround for that voice stealing problem, let me know. I'd love to hear it. If you want to see more content from me, like this video, subscribe to my page. If there's any videos that you'd like to see me make, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to add those to the list of songs that I want to do. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.